Hey, Shalom, this is Dan, and I wanted to just share with you today a little something that God's been showing me. I've been spending some time just going through the book of John and kind of going line by line, and I got as far as chapter 2, and God really began just to show me something. I know that chapter 1 is so rich, but what I want to share with you today is what God showed me out of chapter 2. Now, if you're not familiar with the book of John, this is the story where Jesus is invited to the wedding and he turns the water into wine. And we get really caught up in the fact that Jesus did a miracle, he turned water into wine. But what God showed me was the part that comes before that. I want to read it here to you. I'm reading out of the NIV. This is John chapter 2. It says, "On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding." Now, when I read that, I think in order for Jesus' mom to be there, in order for Jesus and his disciples to be there, this was probably a wedding of maybe a friend of theirs or a relative. It doesn't say, but I'm just kind of piecing it together. You know, I know when I get an invitation, it's normally not because I'm good looking, but I get an invitation because maybe I know that person or they're related to me or something. So, or my wife knows them. But it comes down to, my thought is, you probably knew these people. And it kind of fits with the rest of the story here. So picking up, it goes on and says that when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman," this is Jesus' answer, "why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, that's where I want us to stop. Now, I know Jesus turns the water into wine. But here's the part that I love about the story that really spoke to me as I was reading it this time. Jesus' mom said, "Do whatever he tells you." She's telling the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, I question myself sometimes. Now, there have been times that I feel that I hear God's voice, but I'm too scared, too hesitant, too nervous to move out on that. I don't do what I'm hearing the voice say. And it could be God, could be the Holy Spirit prompting me, it could just be my flesh, but more times than not, I get this voice that says, "Hey Dan, go talk to that guy. That guy needs some help. Go talk to him. Go minister to him." And I get this nervousness, this fear that comes over me, and I don't do what God is asking me to do. But here's how this all fits in with the rest of the story. You see, Jesus' mom told the servants, who didn't know anything about Jesus' awesomeness probably, but she tells the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." She puts the whole wedding in the hands of what Jesus says. And Jesus tells the guys, the servants, "Go fill up those jugs with water." Brings it out, gives it some to the guy who's in charge of the wedding, kind of like maybe like a wedding planner or so. And you know, and he starts getting all these compliments about this being the best wine that they've ever had. Normally they bring out the good stuff first, and then when you're drunk, you pour out, you give out the bad stuff. And here he is getting compliments saying, this is the bridegroom is getting compliments saying, "This is the best wine we've ever had." Now, here's my thought on that. If I was the bridegroom and I'm getting these compliments saying, "This is the best wine we've ever had," I'm thinking to myself, either they mixed up the wines and they gave the bad stuff first and now they're giving out the good stuff, or my guests are too drunk to even know the difference anymore. And they think that the bad stuff is the good stuff. But we know the inside scoop. We know that Jesus did something so awesome. And why was that? Because the servants who were told by his mom to do whatever he says did exactly whatever he said. They might be looking at themselves saying, "We're filling up these jugs with water. We're serving water to these guests," maybe a little embarrassed, maybe a little hesitant, thinking, "Our jobs are on the line. We're going to serve these people water." But nonetheless, they did what Mary said, and that was, "Do whatever Jesus tells you." And the wedding was saved. They had wine that tasted better than anything they had ever had before. Why do I say all this? I go back to myself. I hear God's voice sometimes, and I think, I'm too scared to try that. But if I was to try that, could it not be the best wine, the best blessing, the best anything that circumstance or that person has ever had? It sure could. But it takes one important key. It takes me hearing the same words and being obedient, just like those servants were. Do whatever Jesus tells you. I can tell you right now, there are too many times that I do not do what Jesus tells me. And it's not that I don't want to. I want to do what he says. But again, it's that fear that creeps in. It's that second guessing that creeps in. And so what I want to challenge you with as I leave is the same thing that I find myself being challenged with when I read John chapter 2. Am I willing to do whatever Jesus asks? No matter how ridiculous it might seem. It might seem ridiculous to pour water into jugs. But again, that wedding was saved because they obeyed. Am I willing to do something as crazy as pouring water into a jug and serving it to someone so that God, Jesus, through me, can do the rest of the miracle? Am I willing to put aside my fear, my discomfort, to do whatever Jesus says? Are you willing to do whatever Jesus says? It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Because what happens is he comes and he fills in the blanks. He takes that water that we have put in these jugs, this obedience that we have offered, and he does something amazing with it. So I want to challenge you, just like I'm challenging myself. Are we willing to do whatever Jesus says? Shalom.